Hello, everyone. Today, I will be discussing one of the biggest crises that are going on in the West. So when I say the West, I mean United States, United Kingdom, countries just in the Western side, and that is dealing with the men's mental health crisis. Right now, men are suffering from mental health at a terribly alarming rate, more so than we've ever seen before. Men are suffering from depression, more suicide, more societal issues, and et cetera. And I'll also be discussing a little bit about my journey and what I'm doing to try to help with men's mental health. So, a little bit about me. The reason I'm really passionate about men's mental health is it all started for two stories. One was my grandmother who suffered from Alzheimer's. And I'll never forget the day she called and my dad answered the phone and he yells, "Hey, mom." And she says, "Mom, who is this?" And he says, "It's me, your son, Chris." And she says, "Chris, I don't know any Chris." So he hangs up the phone, and then later that night, she passed away due to complications with Alzheimer's. And she was suffering from Alzheimer's for about 3 years. And she really taught me a lot about accountability. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to bring into trying to help fight the crisis of mental health is hold myself personally accountable and try to do things with it. And the second story, it comes from a man named Quincy. This is when I was serving my undergraduate year at Virginia Commonwealth University, go Rams. And I was feeding the homeless and at Monroe Park. And if anybody knows anything about Monroe Park, it's really, really filled with a lot of homeless people. And it was a culture shock for me, coming from where I'm from, having to see just so many different homeless people. So I partnered with the local church and I would help feed them every Sunday. One particular Sunday, I met a man named Quincy, and Quincy was, I'll never forget him. It was 8 in the morning. He walks up to me with rips and tears and stains all over his shirt. And he just starts, he usually went there to talk to the pastor, but the pastor was busy. So he was speaking to me and he was telling me about his journey and how he used to be a very successful stockbroker and he had also had successful businesses. And one day all of that came to an end and his wife ended up leaving him, taking the home, taking his kids, etc. away. And he ended up becoming very, very depressed after that. And one of the things he turned to was alcohol. And he would start drinking heavily. And he told me that it was the only way that he stopped feeling the pain was when he would drink alcohol. And I just remember looking at him and saying, "Quincy, like, let me just help you. Just put down the bottle, Quincy, please." And he said he couldn't. And it was a real culture shock for me because I was like, wow, like people are really suffering out here. And I started diving into technology and I started building virtual reality simulations and platforms. And I started working with a lot of mental health professionals to see if I can create environments that could be very, very appealing, very, very calm, soothing, and also could deal with, different things within mental health. So a lot of therapists would use the platforms to have one-on-one sessions so they can actually sit with their client on a beach and actually talk to them about their issues and their problems. And from there, we started working with nonprofits, started with STEM outreach, and we've been doing so many great things. But the biggest thing that we see is that just how much men in general are suffering. Right now in the United States, the first cause of death is homicide, and the second cause of death is suicide for men under the age of 45. And in the United Kingdom, it's actually flopped. So the first cause of death is suicide, and the second cause of death is homicide. And what that tells me is that in the West, men are either killing themselves or killing each other. And there has to be just more that we can do about it. Technology is going to be advancing in the future, and one of the biggest things that I would like to see is that, men find a different outreach to, try to tackle their problems because men deal with depression differently than women depression. And men typically don't go to therapy for a lot of reasons, but a big reason is because men get treated like women when they go to therapy. And when women go to therapy, they're there to feel, accepted and loved. But men, they need a whole different type of thing because men want to feel powerful and respected. And I believe that if you give a man those two things, that and a vision and an actual way to actually accomplish their goals, there'll be nothing that man will do to actually achieve them. He'll walk on glass, he'll run through a burning building with a smile just because he has a purpose. And right now I feel as though that in the world that we're living in, that men don't have a purpose. And it's it's sad to see, but as times get more modern, as technology develops, you start seeing these type of things happen more over and over. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, he- famous guy, he believes that technology will get so advanced that AI especially will just really be able to take over just what therapists do, and that therapists will actually not need jobs because AI will become so advanced they'll be able to detect problems, mental disorders, and be able to fix it right then and there. But I think what we need, will always need, is that human connection and interaction, right? And I think that men, and somebody asked me the other day, why are men suffering so more? Well, men live a completely different existence than women do. To be honest, men, we take more risk. Work have dirt, more dangerous jobs. We do a plethora of different things that are just so just so much that makes us so much stress and toll. And women, now are being more single than ever, and that leaves men without someone to help heal them, because women have a humongous, beautiful healing factor with them that they can just sit with you in the room, and the pains that you have, even the physical pain, just starts going away. And when women are becoming more single, that's a lot of men that aren't going to have healing. So it's just going to be more suffering that they go through. And we're seeing a lot of ways technology is impacting mental health. And one of the biggest ways that I see it impacting the future is the use of AI, is the use of VR systems and platforms, because men like, everyone knows men like video games, and being able to put them in a simulation where they can feel like they're escaping reality will actually be a benefit, I believe. And I think it's where the future is going. And it's where me and my company have been trying to lead for the past, few years, and, to try to help with this, this crisis. And, you know, I sit and I talk to a lot of men who are just hurting, and a lot of ways that they're hurting also is just, we talked about women, but a lot of these guys can't even get a date now on Instagram and all these social media apps. Men are, in competition with, all of these other men. Back in the day, when a man was dating a woman, it was just the community that they had to deal with. Now you're having, Instagram, you're having Tinder and all these different apps. So a lot of middlemen that had, chances before are just getting overlooked by other people. And it sucks, because we need marriage, we need family. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is with each other. And I see that in this global crisis, that it will keep continuing to grow. And I pray that, or I'm hopeful that there will be other avenues that, that men will be able to take in the future. And that's the biggest thing. So if there's any men out here that are going through it, that are suffering or going through hard times, I just want you to keep focused and keep focusing on your goal and your journey, because that's what's going to give you the motivation to get through. And as you accomplish that journey and those dreams of yours, the women will come. And there's, it may seem lonely out here, but it is your life as a man. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. So are you either going to deal with it, or you're going to, face your fears and overcome and conquer them? Because that's the biggest thing that, in the world, that we need. We need more conquerors, and we need more strong men to step up. And that's what women are looking for too. They're looking for these strong men. And, dealing with these, kind of piggyback what I've been doing with these virtual reality simulations, I'll give an example. There was a guy who was suffering from major depression, contemplated suicide, just wanted to escape reality. He had stopped eating for weeks. He had gone through a huge breakup. And one of the things that I did was create him a virtual reality simulation to his favorite childhood memory, which was basically a pond where him and his father used to fish at. And I recreated the scenery of the pond to make it look exactly like, what he grew up with. And he spends time there, and it really gave him a relaxing comfort that he's been missing for a few years since his father's passed. And those are just examples of just different ways that we can really take virtual reality and mix it into, real life situations, to where people can constantly grow. And I just want to give one more story of a guy named called Jimmy Castellanos. And Jimmy was an amazing story, because Jimmy was he was serving 5 months in his first tour in Iraq. And his job was to really basically stand guard a lot. But on this one particular day, Jimmy was asked to join his platoon because they were going to go look for a new TV to watch some football. He ended up staying behind last minute. And what ended up happening was his bunkmate, which was also his best friend, took his place in the car in the convoy. So he had to stand back and watch guard. And as he was watching the car go off in the distance, he sees a big boom, a large flash. He sees his friends, his platoon, get hit by you see a bomb hit the vehicle. He rushes over to a car and he zooms over there toward them. He notices that his fellow comrade, who was sitting in the same seat he was supposed to sit in that night, was dead. He sees his bunkmate I mentioned before paralyzed in the back, and another comrade dead in the back as well. And he was really traumatized from that situation. He ended up having to leave the military. He ended up going back home, and he was suffering from PTSD. And, just a quick fun fact, 1 in 3 people who suffer from any traumatic event, whether it's a mugging, car accident, anything that's traumatic, will suffer from PTSD. And the results are varied. The results can be irritating, mood swings, you know, all different types of stuff. And what ended up happening was he got a call. He enrolled in the university and he got a call from one of his mentors who knew he was suffering from PTSD. And there was a pilot program that they had started for the university. So they took 10 different people, all who had different walks of life or different types of PTSD. But since he was in the military, he had his own special type of, scenario. So they put him in this room and they gave him a prop M16 handgun, not handgun, sorry, M16 rifle. And they put the VR headsets on him, and he was afraid to open his eyes, but he heard a very loud noise in the background. And he opened his eyes, and he's in this virtual reality simulation, but it looks so real. He's seeing soldiers running toward the field. He's seeing shots firing off in the distance, artillery shells hitting the ground. And he felt like he was right back in Iraq during that bomb attack where he saw his companions pass. And within a few seconds, he was freaked out. But he stayed within the treatment for 6 weeks. And after the end of the 6 weeks, he was cured of his PTSD. He doesn't remember the last time he even had a nightmare, and doesn't even think about Iraq. And all that was possible through virtual reality. And the big point that I'd like to point out is that he had tried things. He had tried exercise, he had tried therapy, he had tried medication, and none of these things would work. And I'm not saying that virtual reality will always be better than medication or therapy. However, sometimes when you have no other, all the other solutions you come up with don't work out, and all you have is, this virtual reality was another way to get it done, and it actually worked out for him. So we're seeing success rates within virtual reality anywhere where people are suffering from PTSD getting cured between 66 and 90%. We're seeing people that are suffering from even pain relief, or even, there were burnt victims, and did a study in behavioral medicine where they, studied burnt victims. And they sent these burnt victims into a very snowy world, and it was snow everywhere. There were snowmen. You could build a snowman, have a snowball fight, etc. And what they saw is that these burnt victims had less pain, after a few weeks, and they were reduced by 35 to 70% depending on the person. But every person saw a significant reduction in pain relief. So we're seeing different ways to have virtual reality can really change and impact, just the lives of others. And I think as we keep exploring the future, and we keep exploring the try to push the limits on VR, we'll soon see that it's, a very helpful tool for people to be able to use in life. So I encourage you all, if you're a man that is suffering from depression, suffering from anything, you're not alone, and you have different ways. And if it's not VR, or don't stop trying to find it. But the biggest thing is, when you find that purpose, go full head throttle. And for all of us who are watching, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. But if you're at peace, you're living in the present. And through peace, you'll undoubtedly stumble your way into happiness. But just remember that the secret to keep happiness is not found by seeking more, but to developing the capacity to enjoy less. I encourage you all to keep striving and keep working on your mental health, because it is just as important as your physical health. And when you have no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm. Thank you for joining me today and have a great day.